This structure that is covering InforMEA, UNIBLEEP, the Judicial Portal, DART, and ECOLEX is actually physically, and I was still thinking about showing it to you, physically housed in the Environment House with the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. And these are physical servers that we bought about 2.5 years ago, and which have a lifespan of at least 5 to 7 years. This is a big infrastructure. If I recall it correctly, we could use some money from a combination of things, including the EC money for the Global Pact at that time. And that is why we are not in an immediate push to move to the cloud. However, this is something that's coming in the next few years. There are a lot of hosting discussions. And if we are moving everything we have, including the e-learning, which we are not showing here, to the cloud, it is going to be quite a big running cost, because especially e-learning is quite big in volume. We had to upgrade the service. So that's just something I want to say. I will also try to summarize this. There's no decision needed on that imminently, but as we will all progress to moving to the cloud, we have to consider that maintaining this whole system on the cloud is going to be a cost factor that we at the moment don't feel, because we have a one-time investment in the service that are serviced from a BRS as an in-kind contribution to the whole InforMEA project plus. And of course, also supported through our implementing partners as and when they are on contract. That's important. And of course, this system also houses the pool party server, which is the indexing system. It houses the e-learning, and it houses, and then there is one other element that is sitting with the CBD conventions, which is called the Indigo platform, which is the platform that helps us break down legislation, COP decisions into smaller parts and store it in this format. And then from this platform, it is being, transferred again into our infrastructure. Kati knows everything about it, but that is an in-kind contribution that comes from the CBD Secretariat to the InforMEA collaboration. A small one, but still a considerable one. And that's, I think, all I can say now with regard to the infrastructure. I'm going to move this away. But I just wanted to mention this because it's important. Then we have the Law and Environment Assistance Platform. I think here we'll hand over to Kati, but just to say it is quite a considerable growing platform. It houses all the toolkits, and it is the entry point into the law division for legislation that has recently changed. It was initially InforMEA, but it is now basically an important part. I don't know, Kati, whether you want to quickly at this point come in or then talk in the context of the tagging.
I think Andy's very familiar with LEAP. Just to update slightly on the toolkits, I just put a screenshot there of the law and plastics and the law and climate toolkit, which are very near final now. Catherine has been an absolute superstar helping me manually adding content. So in both plastics and climate toolkit, we've got some really nice case studies now, which are all tagged against various thesauri and with nice images, and they're just a really good content type, which we didn't have before. So that's a bit of an extra piece of content that Catherine's been helping me with. So we're really working hard. There's an event that I think is happening in October, so we're trying to get the climate toolkit live by the end of the month. And it's looking quite good. It's very complicated, as Christian will agree, because importing the legislation from the Indigo platform Eva mentioned has proved to be much more complicated, I think, than any of us thought. And then showing the amendment history, the tag, it's really quite a big piece of work on the Drupal side that Christian's managed to achieve, which is incredible. But so hopefully, I think in the next couple of weeks, we can show you the final result, and I think it's looking really great. So I'll be really excited to share that with you and with the rest of the law division. That's it on LEAP, I think.
Excellent. Yes, so I think it's a great potential. I think one of the important things here is to make sure that we are finalizing the legislation entry format and some of the work that Peter has also been involved with, and to then simply mainstream the way we are collecting legislation, but that's on a good path. On the judicial portal, we have just resumed conversations with Juliana in this regard. I think I quickly hand over to Peter to kind of introduce this work and where we stand?
Sure. Thanks, Eva. So just a brief bit of context also for Angela I think you're all somewhat familiar with the judicial portal, but it's basically the portal itself is three elements, three pillars. So the first is the jurisprudence database. So that's totally public and that's live and that's being added to. The second is the network, which has two components. One is a directory where judges should be able to find each other and basically tag by keyword, etc. And a second is a forum where, in theory, then judges who are authenticated judge users, so it's not open to the public, neither of these are open to the public, would be able to have discussions on moderated topics. And then the third is a resources section, which is a place where we could put some of the resources from UNEP, but also from the GJIE. Also, so yes, this is, of course, a partnership with the Global Judicial Institute for the Environment. So some of the speeches they have, some of the addresses they have, video lectures, things like that. So it's a place that's a bit separate from InforMEA. That's their own kind of home where they can store some of these resources, also print resources, reports, etc. So as I said, the jurisprudence section is totally live and is the section that's getting used now. The networking is kind of pending decisions from GGIE on who to actually admit. And so we revived that discussion recently with Juliana. And the resources also it exists, it's public, but it's largely unpopulated. So the jurisprudence is around 400,000 cases. We also have some discussions to add new cases, one under agreement that gets revived every couple of years with the Savin Center as part of the revision of the report that they write with UNEP, and then they collect a number of cases. So that's one set, and then there's also a discussion, I think, with Su Young it was originally on, and maybe with Angela, you were involved in this as well, actually, on a human rights database. So I'm not exactly sure where that would come from or what the modality would be, but that's something that could be in the near future. Pending issues, the main one is there was this list of requests that we had sent a number of times to the different people at GGIE, but especially to Judge Antonio Benjamin. And in particular, without going into the details, this is for them to come to a decision on the conditions for membership, because we can't start accepting requests to join this portal until we know exactly what conditions to apply and also who's going to apply them. From the discussions with Juliana, I think it's finally somewhat resolved that would be us, but I think that should be clear somehow in case it ever comes back to us. And then also the workflow for the input of jurisprudence. So the way that it's built is that you can be a content contributor on the UNEP side, or you can be a judge. And if you're a judge, you have access to the networking section. So I hope this isn't too much detail, Eva, but just to set the stage a bit for the coming work. If you're a judge, you have access to this networking section, but you can also submit cases. So hopefully you can submit your own cases or cases that you find interesting from your country. That then goes to a workflow process. So it's not automatically published, even though we trust the judges. They aren't necessarily like completely tech savvy and they could be missing some or misunderstanding some fields, whatever it is. If it's all good, then the content manager signs off on it. If it needs some work, then you liaise. So basically how that works, who is officially responsible, that needs to be validated, that people are getting the notifications, that people aren't sending cases that aren't getting picked up. So the planned work, is to populate the resources, the imports, and then there's some small work on the glossary that has to do with improvements on pool parties, that we can improve the glossary so that you get better results. So we need to go into detail there. Next steps on that are to determine the method of registration for GGI members. So this was, Juliana had mentioned that there's going to be a solicitation of membership through a different form to the judges, and we had discussed whether that makes sense just to do through email. But then if it is, then we should sort of tailor it to the different fields that we have. So for instance, topics of law that you're interested in, that the judge specializes in or has an interest in, or whether that should be done through our platform already, because then that kind of has a built-in content management and approval process. So that's ongoing. To solicit the additional resources. So eventually when we're ready for them to go to the judges and say, we're ready, please do send us your video lectures, your documents, whatever it is. And then the assignment and validation, basically already covered that, of the jurisprudence entry. So that also, because it hasn't really been live that also need to be tested, and we need to be clear within the law division who's ultimately responsible for that and who's responsible for assigning that work to different components of the law division. So I think I'll leave it there for the judicial portal.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think that covers everything around the judicial portal. As you said, I think it's something that was built with all the nice features, and then we didn't see it being used for a while. And of course, everything needs to be maintained. But I think it's now time, and with Juliana, we have a fresh wind on this. On the Ecolex platform, which is now also housed in our building, and for a very long time was housed with IUCN. This is something that has kind of dropped off the radar, and I've also checked the how can I say, the consumption has kind of decreased with Sleep coming on board, and in a way it's a bit of a, it's, when I started with this work, we had kind of steering committee meetings with Ecolex every year actually. And in the last 3 or 4 years, there was hardly any engagement. We have, however, a direct engagement with FAOLEX and the FAO. So the FAO sends us automatically all their legislation. I think from the 350,000 pieces of content we have in this whole platform, or at least in the InforMEA platform, 200,000, 150,000 come directly from FAO. So that's a very important partner. That means that what Ecolex, what IUCN has contributed in the past, it was basically literature and some bilateral treaties, but even the bilateral treaties come from FAO as well. They also are collecting this as part of the mandate of their founding mandate. So therefore, I think the collaboration with FAO is extremely important, and we will see what happens on the IUCN side. It's a bit like a sleeping beauty at the moment, but we are maintaining it. It's not going to break. That's also part of all the work that is done, by the hosting service, etc. So we've taken this on. And I think very important is that we have at the moment, and we can discuss it afterwards, a process where we are soliciting again for long-term support. And that, of course, is a process that the outcome of which we cannot predetermine. It's going to be a very difficult process. We have a meeting, But at the meantime, we have other vehicles, so we can discuss this, but that's more for the maintenance of the overall. I think that has covered a little bit how we are set up. I was wondering, Christy, whether before we let you go, because I think this is not going to be, all of this inside out, whether you just want to share a little bit the running POs that we have with you very quickly, what we have discussed yesterday, just that Andy gets a taste of what is behind this, and then we will let you go before we jump more into the different elements.
Sure. Yes, I would like to do that. Please let me
you're
share
not
my
yet
screen.
presenter. Yes, 1 second. Done.
Thank you. Okay, so over the past couple of days, I've been working with Eva and the team to present an overview. Basically, we are using a spreadsheet here to present the overview that we are having on various contracts which are currently running. Here, we only see the outstanding PO which are not yet delivered. So we still need to deliver on these POs here. Underneath each one of these, there are the activities which need to be concluded in order to mark this as being done. And then we had here for each one of these, like the current status of the estimated costed budget and the actual spent time and the remaining amounts that we have left to finish the work here. So this is a part of the existing work here, and I was working also with Eva and the team to see over the next period of time, I think until the end of 2025, what will be new activities that could be part of taking new work into consideration. So this is captured here in this screen. I was working yesterday and today to finish this, and hopefully by the end of the day, I'll have everything in place.
Yes. So just to say that yeah, so we have this support now. Also, what is changing is that we have a strong in-house support. So we are now starting to see how can we realign some of the work, how can we, and this is going to happen in the next obviously few months. So that's why Raluca is going to deal mainly, Raluca will be the focal point for not only future solicitations of many others, and to do this together with the MEAs, but also to make sure that this work is being reviewed, this work is being accepted, this work is being followed and monitored. So usually we have weekly technical meetings, and we have also the weekly content meetings. So Christy, I just wanted you and Peter to, also meet Andy and see the larger team. And thanks so much for joining us. And we will continue to be in touch on all these different ones. I know that Christy and Kati have their bilaterals, Christy and Peter have their bilaterals. So it's just good for us to also see who are the faces behind this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. Nice to meet you all, and looking forward to work with you. Thanks. Have a nice rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you so much, Christy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yes, so that is more or less now covering the team and the system that we have behind it. And I thought it would be good to jump into the different work streams now that are relevant for the different parts of the law division and different parts of, and also us. I think maybe we should start with the e-learning part, because this is something that's truly cross-cutting, and to just quickly update where we stand there, what's the latest. Just to say that, of course, we have many mandates when it comes to e-learning, part of the standing InforMEA project, where we always have a very important e-learning component, but it is also that we have extensive steering committee decisions just from the last steering committee that we had in June. If you see, they have managed to have 17 decisions only on what they want e-learning to be. So the ownership by the MEAs is very, very strong. And this is a content that they usually negotiate in a COP-like setting. So it's, of course, not binding in any way, but it helps us very much when we are going to raise funds for it, or when we go again to the EC to say this has been actually something the MEAs have collectively asked for. So I think this is a huge asset in the governance of the e-learning element. And then, Peter, I think we can focus on the new developments, just to say it is growing, it is quite doing well. So Peter, if you can quickly walk us through the main elements and through the most recent developments, and I'll click, yeah?
Sure. Maybe you can bring up, if you have it available, the Prezi 2 to just go to the overview of the platform, or I can as well if Prezi loads. But yeah, so sorry, I wasn't able to put all of the upcoming requests from MEAs into the overview, but just to give the broad picture of the platform.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
But
yeah. Okay, I'm sharing 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Trying to recall, yeah, so it's 52 courses available. I think in the last year it was around 10, over 10 that were added. So that's new MEA courses and updates to the existing courses. In terms of the usage, let me just confirm this. Yeah, platform growth. So this is a bit outdated, it's from May 2024, but it's around 72,000 users. So that goes to what Ivo was mentioning on this being a significant portion of the, I guess, the server traffic. And of those 72,000 users, it's 160,000 enrollments, because users can enroll to multiple courses. And there's, yeah, thanks to Eva. So you can see it's pretty significant, not consistent, growth. There was an uptick in 2020, which we would attribute to COVID, because a lot of people all of a sudden had to figure out what to do online. But yeah, it's well received by the MEAs. I think it's a resource that's a lot more convenient and in a lot of cases economical than the alternatives. And it's one of the main assets is it ties into the content on the InforMEA platform itself. It really drives traffic to the site because it's just popular with users. It's not an enormous overhead for us. And it's nice to see, I think foremost, it's nice to see all of this MEA content in one place. And then we're even moving a bit towards the cross-cutting courses where MEAs collaborate with each other, which you can't really have on another platform that existed, I'm aware of at the point. So the developments in the last year, so we basically have an introductory course for every MEA, and that's done in cooperation with the MEA secretariats. They usually produce the text itself for the course. And then we're moving to these secondary courses. So either if that's a more thematic course like on compliance or a more technical course, like there was this course in the last year on capacity building for BRS chairs. So quite targeted. Or even technical courses for Ramsar participation in this scientific and technical review body that's not even available to the public. So that's the direction that the MEAs are going. And then we're accommodating that in a number of developments that I'll get to on the platform, but also, like Eva said, it had a wish list of recommendations on the steering committee. And at this point, that wish list is a lot more than we can accommodate. But so I think we have to kind of be selective of what we can actually do, but also demonstrates that they, that they get something out of the platform. So yeah, sorry, I'm just pulling up a Word document that I'd prepared here. If I can. I wasn't able to incorporate this into the Prezi because I had some issues. But so we had last week we had sort of a dedicated working group of just the MEA focal points. The MEA focal points that are interested in e-learning and tried to get a sense of what they have in the pipeline for the next year. So I'll just go over that quickly if that's okay. So I'm still collating it because some of it's work that's in progress, some of it's work that's scheduled. But that gives you an idea of kind of the volume and the character of the courses and basically what we would need from our team to be able to meet that. So from Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions, they have 4 different courses. This is on SDGs, on national implementation plans, on more detail on the Rotterdam Convention, kind of just a secondary, more detailed course, and on enforcement, as well as a number of language versions within each of those. And so they typically develop their courses with Unitar. So some of those are on the UNFCCC Learn platform, some of them are on other platforms, but the content is already there. For these courses is a question of how do we duplicate that content on our platform so that it's available to this different set of users. Then they don't necessarily have to go to Unitar every time if they have minor changes. But of course, it has a development cost for us as well. And there's a drawback to creating duplicates rather than interlinkages between these platforms, because if you update one version, you don't always necessarily remember to update the other. There's a background discussion we had on single sign-on API between the platforms, but I don't think you have to go into detail with that because it was kind of Unitar wasn't ready to go forward with that.
Ready. Yeah.
But just for context, CITES has 3 courses that I understand. So we have a long-standing agreement with, or sorry, I shouldn't say we, but InforMEA has a long-standing agreement with Zoe that does a lot of content management work and specializes in e-learning, and has done a lot of e-learning. So they have contracted directly on one course on transport of specimens that I understand is existing and near its final stages. And as I understand, I need to still to be confirmed on the specifics, but I think they have 2 additional ones, one on CITES appendices and one on the compliant, and then another agreement to update the introductory course to introduce some new content on legal acquisition findings and some other more specific things to CITES. Just going through, kind of bulldozing through quickly, but just to give you an idea of what's in progress. CBD has 3 courses that they want to introduce. One is the introduction on access and benefit sharing. One is on establishing measures to implement the Nagoya Protocol, and one is on the ABS clearinghouse, which is a good example of this kind of niche that's really more for national focal points. Doesn't necessarily need to be super available or advertised to the public, but it's still useful to have somewhere. So these 3 courses actually are already developed on our test instance. It's just a question now of moving them over to the live version. The CBD, sure.
Maybe the new page, the new how do you say, treaties section, yeah.
Of the, yeah. So this the bottleneck is the counterpoint. Alex Rafalovich in CBD is on sick leave. I understand. I'm not sure how long that will be. But once they're ready, then we're ready to migrate those 3 courses to the live, and that will be the first instance of where we roll out these MEA sections, which I'm going to get to a bit under future developments. With this additional volume of either really specific courses or even courses that are for NFPs and aren't really all that targeted to the public, rather than have 5 new courses for CBD that kind of dilutes the biodiversity section, then we've created these subsections for MEAs so that they can store whatever kind of more particular courses there. So this is finished from OdaWeb. This is what the section would look like. It's the same theme essentially. They can have both their introductory courses and their more public major courses that are on the homepage here, but then also these more specific ones like the intro to access and benefit sharing, and then whatever affiliated maybe sections that are on their own servers over here. So it's just more tailored to whatever they want to have over there. So the work is done. They're migrating that to live in the next week. And then the first candidate will be CBD because they already have these 3 courses. Then just a few more. There's Ramsar. So this is basically things that are a little bit in the works. There's also kind of nice to have in the next year. But Ramsar has a training workshop on wetlands inventories. So that's already moving forward, and the first workshop's in September. It's going to be over 3 years, and they want to translate some of that material into an online format just so they'll have it for future workshops and for people that they couldn't afford to have attend or couldn't attend for whatever reason. The Asia Pacific Regional Office, which is the most involved regional office, they have a number of courses that they produced for lawyers and judges in Asia Pacific, intro course and now an intermediate course. They got some funding to redo their workbooks. That's a small thing, but just to mention. Then UNECE ECLAC. This is a good example of the SDGs working together on these cross-cutting thematic courses. They produced this along with us, this SDG 16 course, SDG 16/Rio 10 Access Principles. And so they're doing an update to incorporate the ESCAZoo entry into force and updates on our house, which would entail some language updates as well. UNFCCC has a course on another platform that we want to replicate. We already have most of the elements there. BB&J, they had requested a translation. They had a donor, I think, Andy, you were copied on that email, and Angela, I'm not sure if you were also. But it's basically they have an offer of I think it was 70,000 USD. So we're costing what it would cost to translate if we did it for them. Roughly, from what I've done of the translation tables, it would be about 61,000, including ours. But so we need to get back to them in the next couple weeks to see if we go forward with that. And then very lastly, sorry, I know it's a long list. There was kind of the wish list of recommended courses from the steering committee. So this is a course on GMOs that would draw from CBD, the UNECE, Almaty guidelines, plant treaty, and probably IPPC. They had suggested a course on the interaction with scientific platforms, between scientific platforms and MEAs. So looking at IPBES, IPCC, and SPP. I'm not sure what the last one is actually. And then third, a course on indigenous peoples, which even I mentioned later could mesh well with some requirements that we have in terms of work output on gender. In terms of updates to the e-learning platform, maybe I'll just actually bring this document over because there's not too much to show here. What we've done in the last year is update to the new version. one of the review to reporting and dashboards. The big thing was an update to a new course page and theme and the MEA sections that I just mentioned. And then we have a list of pending updates. They're already costed. There's 110 hours in the OdaWeb PO remaining. The limiting factors here are the alignment of my time, OdaWeb's time, and they have a subcontracting Moodle time that were all available at the same time. But they're scheduled, so I won't go through. But yeah, that's kind of everything that's remaining for the development of the platform, actual, yeah, not content or additional courses, but developments and change to the navigation, etc. In terms of our own work, priorities, translations, we have some translations that are almost ready. We have more translations that we translated in the past when we had a certain amount of funding that we had to spend and we knew at some point we'd use them. But what's pending is still to integrate those translations into these actual interactive modules and make them live and everything that's involved in that. Sometimes these translations aren't complete, so often they aren't, so you have to go back for a second round to get whatever you missed with Yunnan translation services. Course updates to the modernized theme. One of the big developments we had was an update to this new course page theme. What's remaining is to apply that retroactively to retrofit basically these old courses into this new theme. So 10 are completed with the consultant, Abdul, that we have through OdaWeb. We have budgeted for maybe 4 to 5 additional, but that's going to tie in with the work to determine what Raluca is able to take on, both with her capacity and I guess what her priorities are in terms of content management work on the e-learning platform. This is just a small thing. It's on the list, but don't need to go into detail. And then support to MEAs. So we have this new MEA section. We need to actually then set up the sections for the ones that want them. So already we have CBD. We're quite sure CITES and BRS will want a section soon too. And then of course more will be available on request, but then we need to schedule our time to be able to set that up.
Okay.
And then just general things, requests for statistics, troubleshooting. Yeah. Last one, next steps and consideration. So I mentioned Luca's kind of being thrown into this, but we'll have some conversations over the next week, and then she can dip her toes in and see mixed metaphors, but see what she's able to take on. If there's a certain amount that she's not available to take on, then we need to determine who is, if we extend this existing consultancy or how we do that. So this is basically the work of creating courses, inputting translations into courses, responding to MEA requests, troubleshooting from student requests, etc. Budget has always been a bit of a tricky one for the e-learning platform because it's kind of cost prohibitive to collect these tiny amounts. Like if it costs 1,000, I mean, it's not tiny, but if it costs 1,000 to input one translation, it's not worth the effort of, or at least it's difficult to go through the work of actually, figuring out the modality to transfer that fund. And then there's a lot of shared costs, like the server costs. It's just not really possible to apportion. Yeah. So I don't think that's a huge problem because it's a clear benefit to the MEAs, but it's something, it still is a cost that isn't always acknowledged. Need to make a decision on BB&J. I think that's fine. Need to schedule what we want to take on from the MEAs. We have the wish list. We need to determine what we can actually do in the next year. Finish the work with OdaWeb. And then the last point is to basically get a status report of the translations we have, the translations we want, and yeah, what's needed for there. So sorry, there's a bit run on, but.
No, I think it's very important because, you know, you are so much in the weeds of it, and it is actually something where I think we are reaching a lot of people with this e-learning, and it's high quality content that has been approved by the MEAs. And so I think it's an important vehicle. When it comes to the cost sharing, that's something we will discuss. MEAs always say, what does it cost? But then, you know, we say, well, this particular cost just costs 3,000, but how are we collecting this? So maybe we can, yeah.
Yeah, and if it's a MEA that comes to me, so sorry, we also have the second instance of this authoring software. So Moodle's one thing. Another component, without going into too much detail, is the software they use. Exactly.
Yeah.
But if they request if they request if they request us to say, how do I do this? Where's this button? How would I input this? Do I duplicate the course? That also has a cost. It's impossible to actually like delineate what the cost is. but it builds up, yeah.
So actually, when I'm listening to it, in fact, there could be a good answer here with maybe Isabel Martinez taking on some of this, because this is a real service we are providing to MEAs, and if MEAs go to UNITA or to the staff college to have a course done, they get slapped with $30,000 right away for a given course. If they build a course on our platform, it costs us relatively little, too little to even collect 3,000, because you know how the process is to collect these little amounts. It's so much administration. So actually, there is a lot of potential to discuss in a longer strategic way of things, because definitely now that the MEs get their own platforms where they can monitor their own usage, it's actually maybe the time to pull in another mechanism to help us finance this, joint pool of work that ultimately benefits so many more than just the law division or just InforMEA, but the individual MEAs. It's not something we could resolve. It's something that comes again and again, but I think it's something to be aware of. But I'm also aware of the time, Peter, so we can't jump more into this. We have to do some follow-up. I wanted to particularly jump still into the UNCT section, because that's something that's going to be rather new, where you also were involved, and then also the goals section, where Kati and Catherine have been totally involved, and which is also kind of new. The negotiators toolkit, we don't have to go into detail. I just said it's one of the big deliverables of the current InforMEA 4. And it has done a lot of work. It was one of the first applications. And Kati, for your information, when we yesterday handed over, kind of talked to the EC focal point, I mean, he's so excited about this negotiator section because he's a negotiator himself. And so it has to be for sure, if we are going to pitch for an InforMEA phase 5. But he said, I would love to be able to search the IISD bulletins for specific days on which it has been tagged so that I can see what happened on that day in this COP. I said, well, I'm not sure we can go to this, but I know for sure that Kati is working, so that we are working on being able to find highlighted parts of the IISD bulletin, something we can do potentially. So we have to include this in a future tendering, and that's not hard facts. It's just something to mention here. But I think I wanted to hand over to Kati and Catherine to talk a little bit about the goals, and then look at the UNCT and the AI pitch that we are now doing to digital transformation. Kati, quickly over to you.
Sure, thanks, Eva. I just added a few screenshots to the goals bubble. If you could go to the update. Thank you. So Andy, this is something that we have been really working hard on recently. My kind of brief was that we did display some information previously on InforMEA which linked MEA strategic plans together, as well as with the Aichi targets and the SDGs. But then with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and also with the mapping exercise which UNEP WCMC did to map, they did a vast mapping exercise between the GBF and all the MEA strategic plans, those who had them, including in the chemicals cluster, not just biodiversity. And so we wanted to reflect those, but their mappings were in a kind of Word document, just buried in table after table after table. There were, I think, 8, was it, Catherine, annexes with just, you couldn't really get a sense of what these mappings actually meant. So we realized that there was a real potential opportunity for us to be able to present that information in a much more kind of interactive way. And also so that users could just, who they didn't want to know about any other mappings other than to SDG 15.5, then they could find that information quite easily. So that's how it kind of came about. So that, and it's all about, Eva, if you could just go back quickly to the slide before. These are, I mean, it will be obvious to you, but these are it's quite clear. And actually at the Montevideo meeting, it came up time and time again, the Global Biodiversity Framework, this need to identify these opportunities for alignment and cooperation and the synergies between everything in terms of implementation that the MEAs are doing, that the GBF is about, that the SDGs are about. So it's obviously kind of a really big, important thing. Sorry, could you just skip now to the next one, please?
Yeah.
So we started off using Pool Party, our favorite tool, because Pool Party has this really nice feature where you can create alignments between different taxonomies. And we realized that, in fact, the frameworks themselves were very well suited to being taxonomies. They mostly don't exist in taxonomy form anywhere. They're just COP decisions, PDF COP decisions. But they do have that structure that lends themselves well to becoming taxonomy. So we basically created them here in the goals section. So you can see there's 9 or 10 strategic plans, as well as the SDGs, which are linked very cleverly to the UN version taxonomy of the SDGs. So that means users can actually go straight from our version to the UN version, and it kind of keeps that consistency between them. But basically, we manually created most of them. Then, could you just get to the next one, please, Eva?
Yes.
We were able to use this related matching concepts. I'm not sure if you can see it, it's a bit tiny, but yeah, so we could relate here, I think it's target 13 of the GBF to, and we didn't make up these alignments. They were done by UNEP WCMC based on information which the MEAs provided to them. So as part of the GBF process, the MEAs are all committed to sending information about these linkages and alignments. So most of them have done that now. And then there's existing information about alignments with the SDGs. So there were a few alignments which we already had on the previous goals section, so we recreated those, but we've been kind of communicating with the MEAs the whole way through, so they're all happy that we're showing the linkages that they want us to show. So that's how we did it. And we also, as well as aligning between the strategic frameworks, we added, for each target of every single framework, we've added LEO keyword terms. And what that means is that if you're on, say, target 13 there in the new goals section, those keywords are then used to bulk tag all the InforMEA content, and you then can see all the related content that has to do with that target by using those identified keywords. It's something the EU are doing actually with country reports against the SDGs. So they did exactly the same by using keywords. And it's really effective if you just want a kind of overview of the core information on InforMEA that has to do with that target. So those were the kind of two main things. And then on the front end, Eva, I think the next slide should show just what it kind of looks like. This is about, I think by next, oh, I forgot to say, those MEAs that don't have strategic plans had still put forward to the GBF process their alignment. So Minamata Convention had sent the treaty articles of their treaty which were relevant to specific targets. And then on the right-hand side, that's the Paris Agreement, because of course UNFCCC doesn't have a strategic framework, but they effectively say the Paris Agreement is our implementation plan. It is our strategic framework. So for example, their Article 7 is aligned to Target 18 of the GBF. And what we were able to do, because we have this brilliant Indigo platform with this content which has been digitized and is machine readable, we're able, what you can see on the right hand side, those kind of tags on the right hand side, we can add, they're called enrichments, to the specific paragraph, sub-paragraph, even sub-paragraph of a treaty text, or even a kind of, I think the next slide shows the World Heritage Convention operational guidelines. Yeah, so these are again, the World Heritage Convention does have a strategic plan, but they don't really use it. They very much rely on their operational guidelines as their kind of implementation plan. So they said to UNEP WCMC, these are the key areas of our operational guidelines that align with these targets. So we were then able to go in, and you can see there 15B has been aligned with target 14. So we can actually select that specific line, that specific sub-provision, sub-paragraph, and tag it to target 14. So then, so that was great, because we were able not just to show the alignments between the strategic plans, which are taxonomies, but also to all this other content, which is still really useful information. So then when you go into the goals page, which looks like this, and we've got, you can see at the top there, SDGs, GBF, and also we added the chemicals framework, because although it's very new, it's still really important to have it there. Alignments are still, haven't even, I think, started with that one, but we've kind of already by assigning keywords to each of the targets, we've already been able to make quite a few alignments between the other strategic plans. So then that's what it looks like on kind of the front end. Oh, thanks, Evie, you can just share.
Yes.
But so I kind of gave OdaWeb a real big headache because I was really determined that instead of just having kind of page after page after page of like an accordion with that 15.5 is linked to these targets of these strategic plans, I really wanted to have like a visual way of showing it.
Doesn't come up.
So Eva's just trying to load it. Otherwise, if you zoom in on the...
Yeah, you can also screenshot. I think mine is just overloaded now.
Okay. I haven't actually got that. But even, I think if you just zoom in on the Prezi,
yeah, okay, let's go back to
how
the
it looks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I can...
Yeah, so it's interactive, it's already
but yeah,
there.
so you can just about see it's a bit tiny, but the link's there to the test section. But if you go into target 1, you then get that like diagram where all the frameworks that have been aligned are there, and then if you click on each one, you see which specific targets, and then you can click on them to navigate around.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. And then I think I put on the next slide either. Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning with the keyword. So that's how you see the kind of alignments between the strategic plans and also the treaty text COP decisions, because actually I should say a lot of the convention said, well, we don't have a strategic plan, but these are the COP decisions where GBF target 13 is most relevant. So there you can see here the tagging's been done to these Leo thesaurus keywords, and then very cleverly using tagging, it then shows those. So there are 8 national action plans that are relevant to target 13. And that's really useful information for MEA focal points, but also UNCTs are really interested in seeing, like, you know, because there's so much fragmentation, and they might just want to see what MEAs are focused on which, and these targets is a really good way to kind of bring that information together. Yeah, so I think that's kind of an overview of goals. It's definitely worth maybe having a quick play around on the goals page, and you can kind of see how it all looks and works. We've been very much sharing the progress with MEAs all the way along. CBD, of course, have had a lot to say about it because it's the global biodiversity framework that's perhaps most prominently featured, because the alignments that UNEP WCMC produced were based on that framework. So we've incorporated all their feedback. I think they're generally really happy with it. We've had really positive feedback. So it's, I think, yeah, so hopefully we're really working hard, and next week that should be able to be live on the platform.
I think so that's they're working on it right now because we can't open it. So they are just doing it now.
Yeah, they are. They're working like mad on it even now. Yeah, they are. Because the alignments to the Cartagena Convention had been done to the convention when in fact they're to the protocols. So that's not right. So they have to go back, and there's always kind of more tweaking to do, but we're really nearly there. It's been a big project. So that's goals. The link between goals actually in UNCTs, I already mentioned that this is something that's really, and I'm sure Peter will share the UNCT Figma where we've incorporated the, oh brilliant, it's working now. So
yeah, Raluca is not sharing because she can load it.
Thanks, Raluca.
Just overloaded.
And the idea is that you can click on any of the...
show the biodiversity plan, right? Yeah, no, but it's still very slow. So it's still very slow. Now we go back to sharing. And I think we have a bit of time left to look at the UNCT. Now it's here to look at the UNCTs and the AI platform, which also features some of this. Okay, because now it's there. So I wanted to quickly say all this work that Kati did. I mean, Annie, I'm very happy that I know it's now very detailed what you get, but I think it's so relevant, because if this work turns out, imagine how easily you can tell to a UN country team, you know, these are the relevant documents for your priorities, because you have made this particular target your priority overall. That's why these particular MEAs that you have ratified are relevant, because these documents and these plans look for the same things to link up to the people, you know, at the national level. So I think there is a lot of potential for any kind of reporting on any kind of and monitoring especially. And so I think when we try to prepare this particular application for UN country teams, and that's again something that Peter was involved with a lot, we basically could harness this work on the goals, because when we started talking to UN country teams, they said the most important thing for us, the entry points are goals, the priorities that the country establishes in the context of the CC, so of the common country assessments, and that's then where the gap happens. When you come to a common country assessment, you identify priorities, but that's when you forget to include the MEAs, because it's just too complex to get familiar with this landscape of MEAs. I mean, it's like quite terrible. So in the end of the day, we have included in the InforMEA 4 project one element of making MEA content digestibly accessible to UNCTs. That's one of the mandates. The second mandate that came right from the InforMEA steering committee meeting, that was more related to linking using artificial intelligence and ChatGPT in that context, because it's very contentious to use ChatGPT in the context of the MEA focal points, who are such experts that, you know, any kind of fabulation can be an issue. But in the context of preparing MEA content for not educated audiences, like UN country teams most likely are, you can harness the potential of GTP that can provide you summaries of these complex issues and how they are linked, without, so to say, upsetting the legislative or the normative soul of a negotiator or an MEA stakeholder. And then we have pitched something to the digital transformation subprogram that has allowed us to do some initial work. And then we created the implementation arrangements. Here you see some of the, we tendered it out to the web to do some of it. And then, of course, we have also included it in our instruments with Zoe and others to make sure that this work is being done. And the initial results are actually, on the one hand, a mini chatbot. As we also use this funding to improve our maps, to improve the way we are harvesting projects from Jeff and making those projects available. And we also, of course, created a mini chatbot that you can test on all the national implementation plans that are pertaining to the Minamata Convention. We did this at that time with Ken Davis, who is now the person who has moved from Geneva to Nairobi to work on VESRA. So he knows us, and we did this, but then because he had moved to VESRA, he was not able to really validate the accuracy of the text that was that this ChatGPT would retrieve. This has been built from scratch by ODWeb as well, and it gives you the source of the document from which this ChatGPT is coming. Another important deliverable of this work, so they have created a GitHub repository so programmers can look at it. But one important application was this, and I'm curious whether this loads now on my poor machine that is completely overloaded, this Figma. And there I will maybe hand over to Peter to quickly introduce it again. If you can maybe show the Figma, because my machine has given up.
Yeah, I can just share.
Just very quickly, because what we are now doing, Andy, and I have just prepared the pitch, we are now pitching again to the digital transformation team to have this particular application for UN country teams implemented either in the context of VESRA or in the context of another tool, and to have it developed and coordinated with, through Andrea Risso's work from the policy unit. We are trying to connect this to the UN country team network of UNEP, and preliminary conversations showed that especially Uzbekistan and South Africa would be potential candidates. And so we think that's a great potential for the future, and it's also a way of really showing the logical evolution of InforMEA being mainstreamed into processes that are not at the core of MEA stakeholders, which is the only way to kind of enhance elements. So very quickly over to you, Peter, of how this looks, and especially maybe the GTP element of it.
Yeah, thanks, Eva. There's a bit of an echo. So yeah, there's 4 main sections. The broad idea of the platform is to take content from existing platforms across collective intelligence, so InforMEA, and the particular point in InforMEA where that data exists, but also LEAP and Judicial Portal, and aggregate the data that's most relevant to UNCTs in one place. So they get an overview of what's available that they might not be aware is available, coming to it from a perspective that they may not have a lot of background on what these MEAs are or what they do. And then they can see that little bit of data on that data, information on that data type, but then at some point the platform redirects them to where that data set exists in its original form. So briefly, there's the overview, which is kind of the at least content type, the cornerstone, because it's all organized as InforMEA is around the MEAs. So you can see the MEA membership. If you hover over, you get a little bit more detail. You get the topics that they're related to that you can also access from here. So if you come in as a UNCT, you know you're interested in plastics, but you have no concept of which MEAs are relevant for plastics, then you could filter for that. This would direct you to the InforMEA page of that MEA. This would direct you to a collection of IISD reports that Katie had basically integrated into the negotiator section. So it puts you right there. They wouldn't necessarily find it otherwise. This is a replication of the maps of GIS data that we have in InforMEA, so Ramsar and World Heritage sites. This simply goes to the contacts. One goes to the Montevideo focal point contact in LEAP. The other goes to the contacts hub in InforMEA, categorized by MEA, and upcoming meetings that goes to the events tab on InforMEA, which is populated via API automatically from the MEAs. So that's the overview. I'll do implementation last, if that's okay, because it's a bit more detailed. Documents Hub is again just pointing to additional document types to let them know that that exists, and then redirecting them to the place on the website where they exist, where they could get more details, more filtering options, etc. So national legislation, you'd have some examples of what exists just to pique their interest. You can see the full set of legislation over here. That would go to this set of 3,500 pieces of legislation for, in this case, Indonesia on LEAP. Court decisions, same idea, it would redirect to the judicial portal. Case studies redirects to LEAP, where these case studies exist, often have been collected as part of the toolkits on plastics, on air quality, etc. And then Jeff projects, so longer term goal for InforMEA that's already been piloted a little bit with Minamata is to get project data from GEF and then to be able to categorize that and house that on InforMEA according to MEA. So once that were live, then you would be able to go and see which Jeff projects in country are related to the Basel Convention in Indonesia. Global goals. So this is also based on some interviews that had been done with UNCTs and RCs in terms of what they want and try and understand where they come at this from. And what we understand is the SDGs are very important. Also in this last call on Tuesday, from what I understood from Andrea's comments, is they want to be able to integrate the monitoring frameworks of MEAs or align them at least with the monitoring frameworks within the CCAs and the cooperation frameworks. And so as I understand it, it's hard to make that connection directly, but those should both at some level be aligned with this guiding framework, global framework of the SDGs down to the target or indicator framework, indicator level. So if you can map the CCAs and the cooperation frameworks to the SDGs, and you can map the SDGs to the MEA implementation plans, which have their own monitoring frameworks in terms of indicators, then that's the way kind of to make this connection, which is why we think the goals section that we're developing, that Katie's developing on InforMEA and will be live soon, is so important and prominent to this UNCT application. So here we don't want to replicate what already exists on the goals page because they can see it in more detail there already, but we at least want to give them the idea that that does exist. So if you went from here, the user knows that they have a priority of SDG 14 and they know that 15, and even within that, they know that they have this priority or that there's this monitoring framework that's connected to target 15.5. You can select 15.5. You can see which MEA strategic frames. This is a replication of what already exists on the goals page. And then at some point, it would direct you to go there. And then also the Kunming biodiversity framework and the chemicals framework. The last element is the implementation, MEA implementation. So this is the only section, at least in this, this just initial concept visual mockup, that involves something beyond just aggregating data that exists somewhere else, presenting it in a visually compact way to let them know what's there, and then redirection to that point. Because it shows that here, it shows what national reports are available per MEA that this country, in this case Indonesia, is party to, and as well as national plans. But as this additional layer of generating summaries using AI functionality. So the idea here, as opposed to the chatbot, which was fairly custom built by OdaWeb, and turned out to be very costly, where you were trying to ask very specific questions against a very specific set of documents. So, for instance, how many women artisanal small-scale gold miners are there in this country? A very pointed, specific question that would only have an answer from one or two specific reports. And so also the specific set of 20 reports from Minamata on small-scale gold mining. Here, the idea is to move away a bit from that, to see instead what can be gleaned from a predefined prompt over a large section of documents on which almost zero preparation has been done. Because, for instance, Indonesia, you have over 100 national reports. If you replicate this over not even all countries, 100 countries where they have enough volume to get something worthwhile, still that's way too large a volume of documents that you would be able to do any sort of formatting or parsing to make that work correctly on this kind of pointed chatbot functionality with an AI. So the idea is, it's a test case to see what we can get across unformatted documents with a prefigured prompt, noting that these reports and documents are kind of impenetrable otherwise to someone like a UNCT, even someone who has some knowledge of the MEA, because there's so many and there's so many different formats. And two, that AI is actually quite good at generating summaries, where it's not always good at creating a specific answer. But it's good at kind of drawing really disparate information and creating a natural language summary. So the idea is you click generate summary. That indicates to the user that it's not something that exists that's been pre-filled before, but you're actually creating it in the act of pressing generate summary. You get the summary. Right now it's just lorem ipsum, but we tried a little bit on Indonesia, and we got we don't go that, but and then here you have more details that would in theory show you which documents it drew the answer from.